Here are 5 study hacks in 5 minutes from 5 books to supercharge your study skills. Students are reading at almost double the rate in the past 5 years because we're finally starting to recognize the power that a good book can unlock for us. But which of these books are worth our time and which are better left on the shelf? Well, today I've condensed 5 study hacks from 5 of my favorite books for you, so let's get right into it. The first tip comes from a book called Deep Work by Cal Newport. To produce at your peak level, you need to work for extended periods with full concentration on a single task free from distraction. Put another way, the type of work that optimizes your performance is deep work. Working for extended periods of time, say a couple of hours, can help us harness peak creativity and productivity in our work. This tip essentially says that we need to limit multitasking when we're working. That means no email, no phones, no music, just focusing on the one thing in front of us. I'm personally guilty of listening to music when I study, but the science shows that any multitasking or distractions will lead to worse memory and productivity. The key takeaway from this book for students is to work for extended periods of time and to limit multitasking. That means turning off the notifications on your phone. The second study hack comes from a book called The One Thing. Success demands singleness of purpose. You need to be doing fewer things for more effect instead of doing more things with side effects. It is those who concentrate on but one thing at a time who advance in this world. We can move faster in life by focusing all of our time and attention at any given time on just one thing. In this book, the author tells many stories of people who, once they dedicate themselves to just one pursuit, they magically achieve all their goals. Applying this to our studying habits, we should only study for one class in any given work session. This means not switching your notes and not trying to cram 5 different assignments into one work session, even though it can be really tempting when you're bored. The key takeaway from this book for students is that we should limit our to-do list as much as possible. Whenever we get to the library for some studying, we should only have 1 or 2 classes that we're going to study for and not keep switching between a bunch of different classes. The third study hack comes from a pretty famous book called The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. In this book, Tim Ferriss explains the Pareto principle, which states that 80% of the results come from 20% of the inputs. This tip explains that the majority of our success comes from only a little bit of our effort, so we need to be focusing on doing the right things rather than everything. Another way to word this is that 80% of our success comes from 20% of the effort. So by focusing on the 20% of the effort that gets us the most results, we can save time and be more productive. This simply means exploring the stuff that doesn't really move us forward, whether that's rereading notes or doing ineffective studying. We need to identify what the 20% of studying that gets us 80% of our results are and go all in on that. Now, the fourth study hack comes from a book called Eat That Frog. Your frog is your biggest, most important task, the one you are most likely to procrastinate on if you don't do something about it. The first rule of frog eating is this: if you have 2 frogs, eat the ugliest one first. To explain this step, I'm going to use an analogy. Your willpower is like a battery. At the beginning of the day, the battery starts out full, and then with each difficult task you do, your willpower battery starts to drain. This book explains that to maximize your productivity, you need to do your most difficult and important task first thing in the morning when your willpower battery is still full. In this way, 1, you're tackling your most important task with all your creative energy, and 2, even if nothing else gets done the rest of the day is still a win because you got your most important task done. The key takeaway from this book for students is to structure your to-do list with the most important task first. Always start out your work sessions by doing the most difficult and important thing and then gradually getting to the easier tasks. And the 5th and final tip also comes from author Cal Newport from his book So Good They Can't Ignore You. Doing things we know how to do well is enjoyable, and that's exactly the opposite of what deliberate practice demands. Deliberate practice is above all an effort of focus and concentration. That is what makes it deliberate, as distinct from the mindless playing of scales or hitting of tennis balls that most people engage in. In this book, Newport argues that in order to get really good at something, you have to engage in what he calls deliberate practice. He argues that while you're doing this practice, if it doesn't feel hard, then you're actually not trying hard enough, and that growth only comes from practice that's difficult. In this way, as students, we need to maximize difficult and engaging study methods. So instead of just rereading your notes over again, we should be making Quizlets and testing ourselves. We should be drawing out mind maps on a whiteboard. We should be teaching the material to our friends. All things that are more difficult and engaging and will actually make us better. The key takeaway from this book is that if your studying doesn't feel challenging, it's probably not helping you grow. So try to implement more difficult and engaging study habits into your work routine. And that concludes my list of my 5 top study hacks. You are now armed with some serious powerful tools to unlock your full potential as a lifelong learner. If you can think of any good study hacks that I may have missed, feel free to drop a comment below. I'd love to start a conversation. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. Peace out.